Hare Krishna, and welcome everyone to the next episode of our Conscious Women Connect podcast. I am your host, Alexandra or Bhakti Devidasi. And today we have a guest who I am so excited to introduce, Pranada Mataji. Is that fine if I say
Pranada, yeah, Pranada.
Pranada Mataji? And she is a author of several different books. For example, there's Wise Love, correct?
First
Bhak-
one,
Bhakti Shakti, Prima
yes,
Kirtan, and Exploring Bhakti,
yes,
correct? And these titles also available in Spanish language.
yes, all three, except for the Exploring Bhakti. The other three are available in Spanish. Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to take up too much time. Just before we started the recording, Mataji and I had a wonderful conversation, just talking a little bit about ourselves and getting to know each other. But yeah, we are really here to talk about, well, many different things. I feel like we're going to go off into many different tangents today. Um, but so, Pranada Mataji, I did first read your book, Prema Kirtan, because I had the idea that I would like to have someone on the podcast who could speak about, well, the deeper, bhavas or moods of kirtan. But I thought, so after I read Prema Kirtan, I thought, let me try to read some of, her other books. And so I came across Bhakti Shakti. And when I looked, I thought, oh, this is a perfect topic for the podcast because we're speaking about women and we're speaking about that feminine energy here on the show, on the podcast. And I thought, what better thing to talk about than the Bhakti Shakti, who is the divine feminine. So, yeah, today we will be talking a little bit about the book that Prananda Mataji has written, Bhakti Shakti. But I would really like to hear, and I'm sure the viewers would like to hear a little bit more about you yourself, Prananda Mataji. What is your history? We just revealed that Prananda Mataji, yes, she is a Prabhupada disciple. Um, so could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, about how you came to Krishna consciousness, about how you met Srila Prabhupada and your journey?
Sure, yeah. I was born in San Francisco, California, in the United States, and in the counterculture of the 70s or early, just before they started, actually. And from an early age, I was very interested in finding answers to important questions like who am I? Why am I here? And specifically, I was looking for an understanding of what I called the absolute truth at 9 years old. I don't know where I got that phrase because I was in Catholic school and no one said anything like that in my home. So, but somehow that came in my heart that I was looking for books of the absolute truth. And I was very serious about this pursuit, which started very young, like I said, 9, 10 years old. And by the time I was 12, 13, I actually started going out of the house to, investigate what options were out there in the big world. And so I became familiar with Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism had just opened up their main center in San Francisco. I went to different events looking for answers and didn't find answers. My father and I would read books at night. I asked him if he would read with me at night when he got back from work, so we were doing that. And I decided that I was going to buy him Autobiography of a Yogi, which was a big book that had just been released on Paramahamsa Yogananda. And so I went to a bookstore to buy him that book for his birthday that we could read. But as I was in the bookstore, I noticed below the shelf that had this beautiful book, Autobiography of Yogi, hardbound, I saw these little books and they caught my attention and I picked them up. One was called Easy Journey to Other Planets, and the other one was called Beyond Birth and Death. And I turned to the back side, and there was a picture of the person who wrote the books. And I thought that was interesting. It looked like an Indian, but I wasn't called to it. So I put the books down, but I couldn't leave them. And I tried several times to leave with Autobiography Yogi, and I couldn't actually. I put the book down and I took the two little books and I bought them and I took them home for my father for his birthday. And he wasn't so interested in this birthday present, which was very heart-rendering to me because I was hoping to please him. Then life took, so we didn't read at that time those two books. I was 13 at the time. And uh, my father decided in the hippie era that he was going to sell everything and travel. So we sold everything that we owned and got a trailer and a Jeep it's called in the United States, and we pulled the trailer and we went south into Mexico and then wound up eventually. We were going to Honduras, but the country was devastated by a hurricane while we were on our way. So we went to an island called Santo Domingo. And we were there for a few months. And my father said, let's invite your sister to come. She came and she had two boxes with her from our belongings, which I did not know we had any belongings left in California. I understood we sold everything, gave everything away, and we were there with what we had. So she came with these two boxes, and I opened them, and there were the two books. They followed me around the world 3 years later. And I took those books and I didn't tell anybody because I knew my father wasn't happy with them when he first saw them. And I had a very profound experience reading them. My whole world changed literally the moment I was reading them. I remembered my early prayer as a child that I wanted to please be shown the books of the absolute truth. I was quite desperate about it. And here I was, and I realized I had the books of the absolute truth, and tears just came down, and I was like literally practically shaking. And um, my whole worldview in that moment changed. I realized I wasn't the daughter of my parents, I wasn't the sister of my brothers and sister. I was a spiritual being, and I was called to act as a spiritual being, which was just a very completely transformative, profound moment. And I, a couple months later, found we were back into the United States in Los Angeles, and I found the temple in Los Angeles, went to the temple a couple of weeks later, and decided to move into the ashram and never left. So that was in 1975. And I saw my spiritual master when he came to Los Angeles on his last visit in 1976 when he accepted me as his disciple. So that's how I came in touch with Bhakti. It wasn't like I had heard Bhakti or knew Krishna consciousness, but I received Prabhupada's two little books. They completely transformed me. It was just literally a moment in time where everything changed. And so that was my journey into Bhakti.
Wow. And how about since then? Since you got what happened when you met Srila Prabhupada? Can we hear the story?
Yeah, well, I mean, by 1976, there were a lot of devotees, and Prabhupada was traveling regularly. He was very busy. He was managing now nearly 100 temples. He was traveling around the world. He was constantly answering letters and meeting with dignitaries and important people. So I didn't have a personal conversation with Prabhupada. Um, though I had deep moments of connection with him when I saw him. They weren't ordinary, let's just say, that in his presence, there was, you felt transported to a spiritual dimension just by being in the room where he was. When I first saw him, he came out of, we were in the LA airport. He was arriving and he came off of the airplane. And you'll hear this from a lot of his disciples. I was surprised because he was so big in my estimation of him and what he had, the gifts that he had given me, the knowledge that he had carried, the yeah, just incredible. We were reading the Bhagavatams as they were coming out, doing a lot of different devotional services, Hari Nam, book distribution, just, trying to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya. So he was very big, and when he came off the plane, he was small. So I was very like, oh my gosh, he's not of large stature. And so I was like a little not disorienting, but kind of interesting. And then I was very profound as he was walking. I saw in him, because my eyes were fixed on him, and I saw in him a depth to him of deep humility, but also a regalness, like a very aristocratic gentleman that was obviously on a different platform, devotional platform, and but humble, extremely humble, very meek, holding his hand, acknowledging every devotee, and there were hundreds of devotees there, but whoever was around, he was making eye contact and acknowledging them and bowing his head and like this. So it was very, very touching, and his glance was very penetrating. It was a glance that saw beyond the body, that this is now we are connected on a spiritual, on the soul platform. That's some of some a little experience of being with him.
Wow, amazing. So, how I will ask, how did your initiation go? Were there many people at the same time?
No, it was not that big. It was probably 10 people. It wasn't like one of the huge initiations. It was probably about 10 people. And Prabhupada he wasn't well. This was in the beginning that he was starting not to feel very well physically.
Hmm.
And so he had left in the morning to go to New Vrindavan the day of the initiation. So he wasn't there at the fire sacrifice.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
See. Yeah. You often hear, I know from some Prabhupada disciples, they were Prabhupada disciples, but some even were given initiation through different
Like
initiating
11.
master like that on behalf of Prabhupada. But during that time that Prabhupada was on the earth, So
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, there would be priests that would do the sacrifice for Prabhupada. Exactly. Yeah. He
okay,
couldn't do all of them.
I see. So where do you live now?
I'm in North Central Florida in the United States, and we're in like not far from a college, so it's like a college town.
Mm,
And I mostly do different engagements from my home. I do mentoring with devotees and people new to bhakti. I do different mentoring. I do writing, as you know, with the Bhakti trilogy. And I'm working right now on a YouTube series that's going to
mm.
be called Exploring Bhakti, like the name of that book that you see there.
It's gonna Exploring Bhakti, the
It'll
book.
be a YouTube series, yeah,
Mm,
which will systematically present bhakti for a Western audience.
mm,
So somebody hears about bhakti, what is it? Just take them through an understanding of not only the practical, well, first of all, the definition of the word and what it means in different contexts, and then understanding the philosophy, the metaphysics, the theology. So
mm.
take them step by step.
Wow. I noticed that in your books, it's like you go really deep in your books, in the Prima Kirtan and Bhakti Shakti. Um, even like things were very educational for me also as someone who has been I can say practicing now for 11 years, but things were like new things were revealed, and I did find them as a good companion for my japa as well. Some little things to meditate on while I was doing my japa, whilst that in that process of reading. I liked in particular in those books you had a few charts,
Hmm.
the charts with different like connections and concepts.
Right,
Yeah.
because I'm a visual person, and
Mm,
so it helps me to see things summarized
mm,
visually. So yeah, I thought that would be because some of the, I mean, obviously we're dealing with Vedantic thought, right, which is a very serious um, philosophical theological teaching, and yeah, it's very deep philosophy. So you're trying to get across concepts, but they're complex, and so I need to, verbally state them as clearly as possible, but then also have those. There's not a lot, but there's a few charts to help kind of like ground the reader. Okay, this is what we're talking about. This is the summary of what we're talking about.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets very deep. I want to say that I liked in particular in Prema Kirtan, your first chapter with the remembrance of Yamuna Devi.
Yeah.
And when I read that first chapter, it actually brought me kind of to tears, some tears to my eyes, just deeply moved me emotionally because about you, how you felt like you're not qualified at all for to perform this kirtan or to perform it because because you saw Yamuna Devi and you felt like you can't compare, and I just really felt from you this very humble mood, of a Vaishnavi, like I can't compare to another, I can't compare to you. Yeah, anyway.
Yamuna Devi was very, she always encouraged everyone and very, um, in, eh, bringing people in to the experience. It wasn't that she was a kirtan leader and
Mm,
therefore she was the center. She was always getting other people to chant, to speak, to share their thoughts and realizations. So she was very, it was one of her signature aspects of her personality, was very accepting and welcoming and very genuine about it. Yeah.
wow, great. So on to Bhakti Shakti now. Um, well, I mean, I have so many questions for you, not only about the book, but about also your process. Well, okay, so what inspired you to write this
Bhakti Shakti.
Bhakti Shakti? Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing a blog around 2009, 2010, 2011. And as I was doing the blog, I was trying to write to the interests and concerns of the broader public. And I had also been listening for some time, but there's a lot of talk about the feminine divine and the sacred feminine.
Mm,
And there's whole groups of people that are very serious about this. They're feminists, but they're also not feminists. There's men and women. And I had read extensively in feminist literature, scholarly as well as trade publications. And I felt that their conversation was interesting and valuable, but they were missing some key elements to their conception of the feminine divine. And I felt that what Bhakti has with goddess Sri Radha was unique. And as well, you know, Radha has really only come to Western shores in the last 50 years. She was not known to the West 50 years ago. And I had seen also some books discussing Sri Radha who did not know about Sri Radha. And so they were presenting her in a unbecoming way and not according to the tradition in which she exists. So I wanted to correct that. I wanted to offer that there was something here in the Bhakti tradition that highlights Sri Radha's supreme position as the goddess of divine love. To add to this discussion, this global discussion about the feminine divine and the sacred feminine, but also to properly introduce Sri Radha, because what you see more and more is within the yoga communities or the people who are doing asana practices, they're becoming more and more interested in yoga philosophy, not just the practice itself, but what's behind the practice. What is in this Eastern thought that could is of interest. And so a lot of people are really finding that there's a lot to learn and take advantage of, that there's a lot of personal benefit people can take. So I wanted to make an offering to that broad community and introduce Sri Radha within the context she is presented within the tradition that she's in, which is, as you know, um, Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So Gaudiya is, don't want to get too complicated, but associated with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Vaishnavism is the proper name for those who follow bhakti, right?
Yes.
So in that tradition, so I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to properly introduce her, but add to the discussion about the feminine divine that people were missing. They were missing like whole aspects of a, philosophical framework that Sri Radha can fill in. So that's what inspired me to um, to take up Bhakti Shakti.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That gap in the published knowledge or
Yes, yes,
but I'm
exactly.
curious to know, I'm not sure if it's even blasphemous to ask, but how were other books presenting Radharani?
Well, there's an understanding that Radha and Krishna's love is not it's not the love of a husband and wife. It's a paramour love.
Hmm.
So people they get that, and without understanding the basis of their spiritual love, they just take it as licentious love, right? It's
Hmm.
a passionate love, but it's because they have a material conception, then they misunderstand the nature of the pure love Radha has for Krishna. And that is, well, core to talking about the feminine nature, which is as lovers, the generally feminine qualities are givers, they bestow love, they're grace, they include community. These things we think of as generalizations, but oftentimes they are true as well. So, yeah, I wanted to correct that misunderstanding that was there in the yoga asana community, and it was growing. I mean, people, which is interesting, at least in the United States, I don't know what this is like in Europe, but in the United States, bhakti is like a buzzword in the yoga community. And it's a large community, at least maybe 17 million people in the yoga community in America. So bhakti's like all the rage, but most people don't know what bhakti means. They have no idea.
Hmm.
And then they're familiar with the word Shakti, which is power, and that it's associated with feminine power. But they also don't understand that, and they attribute it mostly to the goddess Durga. So Durga has been very famous since the 70s in alternative circles, but without much of an understanding of the where the relationship the Durga has, say, with Radha, who's who, and their relationship, and all of this. So I took the opportunity in Bhakti Shakti to, first of all, join the two terms, Bhakti and Shakti, right? Um, because Sri Radha is the personification of the Shakti of Bhakti. And Bhakti means pure love, pure devotional love for the sweet absolute, her beloved. So yeah, so I took both words, came together, and for me, just a little esoterically, but for me, Bhakti Shakti refers to the internal energy of God. God has the external energy, which is represented by Durga. We are one energy, the souls, and then a third energy is the spiritual energy, and that is embodied by Sri Radha. And I think when you start talking, when you take on serious philosophical topics, the more information you have, the better equipped you are to make decisions about your own spiritual practice. And gaining knowledge will give you the ability to actually act in a way that's favorable for you, right? So um, that's what Bhakti Shakti does. It introduces the three energies of the Supreme, and it shows how we can choose. We can have a relationship with Durga, the supreme goddess of the material energy, or we can choose a relationship with Sri Radha, the goddess of the spiritual energy. And it's important to know that there's a distinction. That's one of the things that Bhakti Shakti speaks about, is that not all the goddesses are alike. They offer different, they represent different aspects, and they give different benedictions. So what you're looking for, you need to choose the proper goddess. So is it going to be a Celtic goddess because you want this benefit, or a Greek goddess, or a Roman goddess, or some indigenous goddess from some culture? Or, when you look to the east, then you can look to Durga, goddess of material energy, and then new to the world, Sri Radha, the goddess of the spiritual energy.
Wow. So deep. You know, what's coming up for me when you're talking about all of this, is just that, she's the Shakti of Bhakti. She's not, I mean, she is and she's not the Shakti of this world, right? But what's coming up for me, it's just like a little thing that came into my head is that like I feel in those instances when I've been in those yoga studio situations, like in North America or in well, Western Europe, it's like if there is a Radha Krishna there, um, I feel like many people don't know who that Radha is. You know, they know, oh, that's Krishna. Oh, who's with him? Oh, it's Lakshmi, or we don't know really who it is. There's not like there's not a lot of awareness about who Sri Radha really is. And for me, my observation is like I feel like Durga Devi, her form is there. If you see on the altar, if you see there's Radha Krishna and Durga Devi, Durga Devi, she stands like alone on her own, and I feel like in some way, many people are more like it's just more like readily approachable somehow. But like with the Radha Krishna, I feel like to really understand Radharani, oh, is it frozen? Oh no, okay. To really understand Radharani, I feel like you need this deeper understanding or deeper explanation, or like disciplic succession or something like to help you to really understand that bhakti. Because I feel like her, like you said, Bhakti Shakti, like I feel like without real devotion to her, you won't be able to get into her mood completely. I don't know if
Right, that would be the case for any goddess. Without devotion, you're not going to nothing's going to be revealed to your heart, right? Because that is in a relationship with one of the goddesses, there's some kind of a connection. And so that connection has to be made. But yeah, I think what you're getting at or what I was hearing as you were speaking, is that it's not really easy to understand spirit or
Mm,
spiritual energy. This is a concept that is foreign to us, because what we have experience with is the material world, which is the material energy. And we're covered by an illusion here. We think we're the body, we think we're the mind. We're not in touch with the true self. And even when we have knowledge that, no, I'm not the body and the mind, I am a spiritual being, oftentimes it's not realized knowledge. So when we talk about spirit and spiritual energy, it's foreign to us, and it requires proper definitions. It requires, well, backing of texts that explain it, right? It's not going to be something we can just come up with, conjure in our mind. Spirit is just the opposite of matter. It doesn't work like that.
Mhm.
So, the knowledge that I'm sharing in the Bhakti trilogy, along Bhakti Shakti with Bhakti Shakti, is knowledge that's coming from Vedanta, which is ancient texts that are, speaking about the nature of the soul, the nature of consciousness, the nature of the world, the nature of the Supreme Person, our who we are, and the proper relationship we can have with the material world, and the proper relationship we can have with the Supreme Person, and then we get on top of that the proper relationship we can have with the goddess who is supreme. She's like in the Bhakti tradition, she stands above even the sacred masculine because of her the intensity and purity of her love is so um, um, unique that she actually can control Krishna by that pure love. And here is, personification of love itself, engaged in a loving relationship with her beloved, shows us how we can also have that intensity of a relationship with the Supreme. And she facilitates that our relationship in that way when we approach her with devotion.
Yeah, for sure. A concept in your book which came up, and we've already talked about a little bit, was the the feminist community.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm wondering, what is your involvement with that, and how was your book received in that community?
I don't know. The book is more directed toward an audience who's already interested in bhakti or yeah, has probably some familiarity with bhakti. And I haven't heard specifically from any feminist organization or a feminist per se. My own interest in it was to educate myself about the conversation that goes on globally around the sacred feminine and the feminine divine, and I did a lot of reading. But my focus really is on my bhakti practice and the offering that I can make into the community by sharing the wisdom of bhakti and the gems that come in the tradition. So that's where I keep my focus.
Hmm. And you mentioned before about different goddesses around the world. Do you have any connection with any of these other type of goddesses or?
No, I mean, I'm aware of the different goddesses by reading about them and understanding them. And my really what I did was an education in order to be able to write Bhakti Shakti. I felt like I needed to be well versed in the conversation, what is discussed about the sacred feminine, and I had a goal to add to the conversation by showing what Sri Radha has to offer to the idea of sacred feminine and the feminine divine. So that was my focus, and I don't. My personal relationship is with Sri Radha, and that's my goddess of the person I have a relationship with, the person that I converse with on a regular basis, the person that I want to please, the person that I wish to be graced by. So my focus is exclusively on Sri Radha.
Hmm. I noticed in your book you mentioned about how there's more recently been this awakening of interest in goddess worship in the
Yes,
West.
right.
Could you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, it's if anyone looks at the history, you'll see that it's coming from feminism, the feminist movements, and in feminism themselves, we see that there's three now, maybe four, what they call waves of feminist thought. So some began before the 60s, then there was the 70s, and then there's the 90s, 2000s. So in the 70s, when a feminist wave really took hold in North America, there was a lot of interest generated about the goddess because the topic was about emancipating females and freeing them from different um, restrictions that they had, and people becoming more and more aware of the abuse of women around the world. And this was, for many people, quite horrifying. So it's kind of like in response to these thoughts, these pockets of thoughts, these waves of thoughts, that women and some men have taken an interest in, say, goddess worship because they're very frustrated with patriarchal society or thought processes, and they're definitely finished with misogyny and chauvinism. So um, that's where it really has sprung from. Of course, throughout history, people have worshiped goddesses. They've worshiped them for different things, for a good harvest, for better relationships, for health, for protection. So it's not that goddess worship is foreign in human society. It's been always quite prominent, actually. But in terms of Western, in terms of the current a model that's being discussed. It really started kind of rising in the 1970s in North America. And then again, another wave, I believe it was, they consider the second wave in the 1990s, like that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you bring up some really important points, I feel like, um, about patriarchy and the like ingrained, I mean, patriarchal systems that come through with many forms of spirituality or religion, around the world. And would you say that it's important to have that concept of a goddess to for balance?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether I would say that, but it's part of the Bhakti tradition. So at least we can clue in on that, right? And it seems to be, in terms of metaphysics and reality, something very important because at the top of reality, we have a goddess and God.
Mhm.
So clearly, there must be some importance to the feminine aspect and the balance that feminine nature brings, feminine qualities, feminine nature, feminine characteristics bring into life and into a society. Um, So, I mean, maybe taking it in a certain way, I would say that um, certainly we see in our own life, in our daily experience, that if things go too masculine energy, then well, it's not good for children, for instance. They need motherly care,
Mm.
motherly affection, and what's more important than raising healthy children? So, and then of course, I don't know about you, but I connect with my sisters, with my girlfriends,
Mm.
and that connection and that warmness that you feel between two sisters, well, it just doesn't get duplicated in a relationship between a man and a woman that I've experienced anyway. So yeah, I think the feminine energy is really important myself.
Mhm.
And yeah, we could talk more details about that. But the other thing is very interesting, when we're talking theologically, Bhakti, is that according to Vedanta, the soul is feminine. So it's not that, some people will say the soul is neutral, and that's supposed to be like a politically correct thing to do, right? The soul is just neuter. It's not man or woman, it's just neuter. Well, according to Vedanta, the soul is feminine. And why it's called feminine is because intrinsically the soul has certain feminine characteristics and qualities very strongly. The soul is naturally a lover. The soul is naturally a servant, is naturally a giver. This is the dharma of the soul. The dharma of the soul is that is to love and want to be love and seek that love. And then we learn in Bhakti Vedanta that that love is not able that the fullness of that love is not experienced in this world. It's a fullness of love that can only be experienced from one spiritual being to another when it's expressed on the spiritual level with the spiritual energy. And so in the soul being feminine lover is searching for that love that is only between the soul and the supreme, the sweet absolute. And Bhakti Devi Sri Radha shows us the natural characteristic of the soul. She embodies that fully, that she is the embodiment of divine love. So she shows us practically how to express what is intrinsically who we are.
Wow. So if she shows us how to express intrinsically who we are, then what would you say Durga Devi does?
Durga Devi is trying to wake us up and say, you're looking in the wrong place for happiness and love. And that's why the material world is a place of suffering. It's to teach us we're 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 looking for love in all the wrong places.
Hmm.
We're looking for happiness in a place where happiness is fleeting. It's not permanent. It's temporary. It's actually just moments of cessation of distress or discomfort or angst. So that's not, according to the sages and the seers of Eastern philosophy, that's not real happiness. That's bankrupt idea. So Durga Devi is her whole responsibility as the matrix of the cosmos is to teach the soul this is not your home. This is not where you belong. You belong somewhere else. You need to look elsewhere. Look inside to yourself,
Mhm.
to the soul, and then find your home by connecting with your source.
Mhm.
So that's Durga Devi's sacred responsibility is
Mhm.
to wake us up. And then Sri Radha's gift to us is she embraces us and she welcomes us to our home and says, "Here, this is the way you come. I'll introduce you to your beloved. I'll make arrangements for you to be in direct contact with him,
Mhm.
and come this way. Come this way."
So Durga Devi can lead us to Srimati Radharani.
That's right. That's the whole point. That's right. Yeah, Srimati Radharani in Bhakti Vedanta is considered the fountainhead of all the goddesses. So all the goddesses that we know worldwide, they have their existence and their Sri Radha is their source. So Sri Radha is the source of all the divine goddesses in the spiritual and celestial realm. She's the source of all the mundane material goddesses. She is the energetic source of all the goddesses.
Yes. Wow, amazing. So you write about Maya covering now, okay, now I do know, and maybe you can tell us a bit about it. There are two types of Maya, correct? The
I'm not
Maha,
sure. Okay, Mahamaya.
Mahamaya and Yoga Maya. Um, I, could you tell us?
That's quite, you're drilling down into like really kind of esoteric and detail. But yeah,
Mhm.
there are two kinds of Maya. One is spiritual and one is material. So it's not exactly like Durga, and although Durga is the representative is Mahamaya, Sri Radha technically isn't Yoga Maya, but she is a goddess of the spiritual energy. But yeah, so there's material and spiritual um, illusion. But yeah, that's quite a deep topic. You want to go there, huh?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time for that, but
That's like a really deep philosophical point.
yeah. Okay, let's save it for another time. But the question is written here. So you write about Maya even covering powerful conscious beings. How can we become more aware of when we're caught in Maya or caught in illusion?
Yeah. So, illusion, according to the ancient texts, means that you are not aware of yourself. That is the definition of illusion. I do not know who I am.
Mm.
I am a spiritual being, not this body, not the mind, which is also a subtle misconception that we have because so much happens in the mind. I'm not the mind, I'm not the body, I'm a spiritual being. So, not knowing that, not realizing that is called illusion. So, the first thing is to understand what illusion is. Then, so if I'm a spiritual being, but I'm out of touch with that because I have this identity that I'm this female body born in California in such and such a year of this family, and I've done these things. That is my identity. That's my ego. That's not who I am. So until I awaken to that, then there's illusion. So how do I get out of the illusion? Well, there's scientific methodology. There's practice for realizing the self. It doesn't come naturally for one in ignorance or illusion. So the question is, where do you get that knowledge? So everyone may answer that question differently, but according to the Bhakti tradition, we get that knowledge through the Bhakti texts, which are revealed texts, sacred texts, and they not only educate us about our spiritual essence, but they give the methodology, the practice by which we can have a first-hand experience of who we are. Now, this is the reason why I emphasize that is because it's very important. The yoga systems are different. They're not just faith-based. This is not just, I believe this, and now I'm going to hang on until death and hopefully it'll be true. Yoga systems means you engage in a practice so that you yourself can experience what is described in the texts. It's not just theory. It goes beyond theory. It goes beyond just what's said in an old book, right? It is speaking to a universal experience that is possible for anyone who takes up this practice, and it's scientific. So here we are. So we're in illusion. We've forgotten the self. We have to become aware of the self through a spiritual practice that is given in Bhakti texts. And so now the individual answers themselves if if they're freed from illusion by engaging in the practice. So source of knowledge is important. Understanding some of the metaphysics of the world then it's knowledge. It's knowledge to get out of illusion. To get out of illusion means knowledge. So it's a question of where do you find proper knowledge? Where do you find knowledge that will take you to happiness? In order for you to be happy, you have to know how to act. So how are you going to act? That's given in the texts. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavat Purana, especially these two bhakti texts.
Wow. I could listen to you speak all day. It's just amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the writing process.
Okay.
Because I do writing a little bit as well as we've discussed, but to inspire aspiring writers, um, can you talk a little bit about your process with writing Bhakti Shakti?
Sure. Yeah. I don't consider myself a writer, actually. I don't, I, I had to spend some time to learn what writing was and how to write. And I still don't see myself as a writer. It's not like my identity is a writer. And so I had this topic that I wanted to write on, and I didn't know where to begin. It's quite daunting, actually, to look at a blank page and not know where to begin. You probably have had that
Mhm.
experience.
Mhm.
And what I found was that if I just brought some idea to the page and then I was stuck, I would be shown either through listening or talking with someone or, like listening to a lecture or reading a book or thinking about something. The idea would come and I would be like, oh my God, that's exactly where it needs to go right there. And so I'd put that in and then I would get some ideas, I'd write some more. And the whole process worked like that. What I found is I was listening. I started listening and I was just writing down what I heard. And
Mm.
so very much I was watching it come out.
So you didn't write this book, is
I
what you're
didn't write the
saying.
book. No, I didn't write any of the books. They all happened the exact same way. And it was a very faith-building experience. It was very awe-inspiring because literally I did not know what I was doing. And I would just try something, but then I would, like literally, I would just pay attention to hearing, speaking, reading, listening. And I'd get something and I would write it down. And then I'd get the next thing and I'd write it down. And I get the next thing. And they all came out like that.
Just wow. You hear, I have experienced some of that myself too. I haven't done any like actual um, planning for anything I've written. It's just kind of like step by step, what's coming on, what's going on in the book. I haven't written too much nonfiction, but yeah, wow. Sometimes it's like the puzzle pieces are j just come together and it makes a nice picture.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like I had the outline of the book in mind. I had an idea what I wanted to do, and then the framework started developing as I went into it. Yeah.
okay.
So,
So were there things that you took out, you reworked?
oh my God. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all three books, although Prem Kirtan a little less, all three books, I mean, I rewrote many sections many times, not just once or twice or three times. I would rewrite. And one thing about my writing is I don't hesitate to remove something, even if I think it's good, if it doesn't belong.
Oh, but do you save it
So
in a different place?
I save it in a different
Okay.
place in case I want to use it or go back to it or it finds a place later on or something like that. But if it doesn't belong right where it exists, I remove it right away without any hesitation. So I'm not attached to certain things, which I find was very helpful for um yeah, for it taking form, right? Because if you insert yourself and the ego there, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Not gonna work.
For sure. Wow. Especially if you're writing spiritually based literature,
Yeah,
you got to feel like you're a vessel, right?
exactly. Very
Wow.
important. Yeah.
So have you had any memorable moments with readers who were deeply affected by the book?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of readers contact me, which is interesting, but I think that's pretty normal. People think, oh, she's a writer, it's don't contact her. But yeah, some people have contacted me, and many of them were new to Bhakti, and they were very moved by hearing about Radha, and she became very important to them. I remember receiving a picture from one person. They had made a Xerox of the front cover and put it on their refrigerator where they were looking daily and saying prayers to her. And a lot of practicing Vaishnavas, practicing devotees, wrote to me and said, Radha's always been in my life, but I'm really developing a relationship with her now, and it's because of the book. So, yeah, I've had several very memorable moments. I mean, for anyone, if you can touch even one person's heart, it's precious and meaningful. So, I've experienced that and been very grateful that that something there could be meaningful for another person.
Wow. One thing I am curious about is your own development of this relationship with Srimati Radharani. As you mentioned, you were in Catholic school
Yeah.
previously, and the Catholics, I don't know if you had any connection with Mother Mary or any of the feminine divine in Christianity, but I'm wondering, after you became a devotee, like when you read those first two books of Srila Prabhupada, you know, how did you develop this relationship with Srimati
Yeah.
Radharani in the early years?
Yeah. Um, Radha was always part of the imbibing the bhakti essence. But for some reason, she wasn't very prominent for me. She was always there, and I always had some feeling, but she wasn't so prominent. And it was over the years that I began developing a personal relationship with her, with the person Radha, not with the concept Radha, not with the idea Radha, but with the person Radha, who is real and very much available for um, a personal relationship, a dialogue, an exchange, a loving relationship. So it was over some years that I developed it, and I felt very much also that what Radha represented, not only spiritually, well, very much spiritually, because what she represented spiritually, she gave me a lot of strength for um, being in the world as a female and as someone like championing the role of women in bhakti. And she like personally inspired that journey, which went on for decades for me, where I would really try to break through some of the patriarchal systems within the bhakti community. And so, yes, like a heroine, right? And so the goddess, the
Mm.
goddess, the heroine that calls you on a path and gives you strength to do the work that you're trying to do, gives insight, accompanies you, and hearing about her and the beauty of her love, the purity of her love, where you're just called to so much inspiration about the possibility of the soul in transcendence to become a divine lover of the Supreme. And you hear about the extraordinary qualities of that love, which is nothing like mundane love. It's just, well, it just speaks to the heart. It makes you sing and want to dance and to embrace all of life to experience such love. So all of that became real through a personal relationship with Srimati Radharani. Yeah.
Wow. Was it what so you came to Krishna consciousness, but I mean, was it a turning what was the turning point where you really started to get to know Radharani much better? Was it a book you read or some verses?
No, it was really concern about different things that I was seeing about how women were treated in the bhakti community.
Okay.
And it was very disturbing to me,
Mm,
and it was unacceptable to me,
mm,
and it was the antithesis of everything that Srimati Radharani represented. And so I started turning to her um, then, and I felt a lot of strength we're that when I'm talking about this topic, we're standing on very solid theological and philosophical ground just by the existence of Srimati Radharani and who she is. And so, yeah, so she just became more and more prominent naturally. It wasn't something that I was looking for exactly, but the cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing between this grand theology, philosophy, who Srimati Radharani was, and then what was happening on the ground was just like not working for me. So I turned to her very much.
okay. I see. Wow. I mean, I would like to ask, is there any I mean, other than your book, of course, is there any place or scripture that you would recommend us to read to get closer to Radharani or any part of scripture?
Well, I think approaching Srimati Radharani initially from a philosophical standpoint to really understand who she is, what she represents, how to approach her, and how to develop a relationship is a starting point because it can't be just sentiment. We're not dealing with what we're capable of in terms of emotions at this point cannot relate to a goddess of spiritual divine love. So we have to come from a place of knowledge first. So I would say just learning about the Bhakti philosophy in general, you're going to hear about Srimati Radharani, you're going to hear about her relationship with Krishna, you're going to learn about the sweet absolute, the supreme person who is our friend and our beloved. So you're going to get like a grounding, you get a foundation. You need a foundation, right? And then you can build with on it with some um, emotion that's grounded in truth, right? Not just sentiment. So I would say just the regular texts in Bhakti. And then I don't know of there's no book specifically about Radharani except for the more esoteric texts, which are called the Leela Shastras. And that is just not for not where we are in our devotional understanding and progress.
Mm,
That's at a later time. But all the sweetness of Radharani is revealed just by starting to hear about her, interacting with her, and yeah, she makes herself known. But
mm,
otherwise, I don't know of a book, and especially none that introduces Radha like Bhakti Shakti. And she's not just introduced. I mean, I'm going into some depth about who she is, the philosophical foundations of her, who she is, how to relate to her, what her qualities are, what she can offer the soul, which is different than Durga and other
mm,
goddesses of this world.
mm,
So I'm going into quite a bit of detail there.
mhm,
Um, I think it's a really good book. I
mm.
didn't write it, right?
Right. You didn't write it. Yeah, you didn't write it. But just I mean, we could talk forever. I won't keep you I won't keep you forever, but just to talk a little bit about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Um so now what we know in history is something like Radharani's identity was hidden, isn't it? Until
Yes,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed this
right.
to the world. Could you tell us a little bit about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
Yeah. So we have to step back a minute before we go right there because
Yeah.
we have to get some grounding. But what we understand. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is from the 16th century. And so we have historical record of his presence. It's not like Krishna and Radha, or we're so far in the past, we don't have a historical record. But we have a historical record of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have biographies and hagiographies by the intelligentsia and the elite of the day. So they're not just fanciful depictions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have a historical personality with quite a bit of depth. And what we learn in the texts is that um, we're we're invited, a special window is opened up to us into the spiritual dimension by understanding who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. And what that is specifically is that Krishna considers Krishna is conquered by Srimati Radharani.
Mm,
Okay, so let's just wrap our head around that for just a second. God is conquered by a goddess. And the reason why he's conquered is because of her pure love, her competent, pure, selfless love, where there's everything about her is to offer to her beloved. And Krishna sees this supreme person sees this, who is also a lover, and he sees that she has something he doesn't have because the experience of the lover is actually greater than the beloved. The experience of the giving of the love is actually is a higher experience, more joy than receiving love. So Krishna is looking at Srimati Radharani and saying, I don't understand her. She's conquered me, first of all. I can't repay her because every time I extend my love, she increases hers to me. I extend it, she increases, and there's this eternal dance of love that goes on increasing, increasing. I'm in debt. I'm in debt and I can't repay the debt and I can't understand her love. I can see that she's experiencing more than me. How am I going to, this is not, God has to know more than this. How am I going to solve this riddle? So he says, well, if I take the position of a devotee of God, of a devotee, of a lover of God, then I'll be able to experience something of what Radha experiences.
Mm.
So Krishna takes the mood of Srimati Radharani and he comes into this world as Chaitanya 500 years ago to not only experience himself the full extent of what divine love is, that he hasn't even experienced himself, but then to demonstrate that love to us, to call us and say, this is what is available to you, an eternal existence, a dance of divine love with the beloved, as we see in the relationship between Radha and Krishna. And Mahaprabhu comes to show that to us, to show the exalted nature of Radha's love, and to say, this is the love that's possible. This is the love you want to attain. Come this way. You do it like this, in feelings of separation from the beloved, and how? Chanting the beloved's holy names. So Radha, in her own ecstasy and the eternal realm, is constantly calling out to her beloved, calling his names. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, this is all that's required of you to achieve this most exalted position, is to call out the beloved's name with affection, attention and affection. I mean, it's how simple, right?
Oh my goodness. I love your descriptions. Just, it's amazing. It's just like so much rasa. So much rasa. So juicy, what do you
Yeah.
I just could listen to you all day. It's amazing. So final question. Is there a core message that you hope readers can take away from reading Bhakti Shakti?
Yeah, I had a very specific aim in mind in writing, besides what I've explained here. So, talking about the feminists' ideas, what I see what I see is happening in feminism is a search for identity, right? We want to be accepted, we want to be loved, we want to know who we are.
Mhm.
So, for me, feminism is a search for identity. But the whole feminist discussion is grounded around this false identity, liberating this body, allowing me to do more work, work in this way or that way, any way that I want. It's all grounded in the material realm. So what I was offering to the reader of Bhakti Shakti is say, look at, it's not, you have opportunity to claim two different identities. You can claim the material self and try to elevate that as far as it's going to go, even though the body's going to die. So it's a proposal that doesn't have a long-term facility for you. Or you can claim yourself as an in your eternal identity as a spiritual being. And that is very specific in bhakti. It's not just it's not a nebulous idea about I'll become somebody. No, you'll become just as you are an individual person now with desires and thoughts and wishes and relationships, you become a specific identity in transcendence. And you can work toward claiming that in this life right now. So here's your choices. Your feminine body right now that's going to die and get ugly pretty quickly as you age. Or you can go for an eternal identity. Here's how. Here's how you do it. You, instead of looking to the material energy, the material body, Durga Devi, turn your face to Srimati Radharani, to the divine love, to the spiritual energy, and all that means for the soul in eternity. There's the possibilities are unlimited. The possibilities for the soul in eternity are unlimited. And here we have, you know, very limited scope. And then we're into another body. And then it could be a male body, could be a female body, could be an animal body. It's this. So my invitation in Bhakti Shakti was look at, you have these two potentials. Which potential will you develop? And if you want to choose the higher potential, how are you going to do that? This is how Bhakti Vedanta says you can do that, as I described very simply, chanting the sweet absolute's name with love.
Wow. Mataji. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for all this today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Bhakti Devi.
Yeah, wonderful to meet
May you
you.
remain safe and well. And
Thank you. We're just going to say goodbye to the viewers actually first, and we
okay,
might say a few words to each other after. But thank you to the viewers today for tuning in. Wow, this podcast has been so juicy, so nice. Wonderful to have you, Mataji. So um, just thank you so much for all your knowledge today, and
thank you for taking the time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for welcoming me.
yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.